Welcome, everyone. Okay, imagine for just a second that you are the CEO of a massive global retail brand, right? And you've just noticed a sudden 5% drop in quarterly engagement. You've got exactly 3 weeks to figure out why, and more importantly, how to fix it before you have to face your board of directors. Now, you can't just guess. You really need a system. Well, today, we're diving into an explainer on a foundational text called Statistical Foundations for Managerial Decision Making. Now, I know, that title might instantly bring up some slightly painful memories of dry, incredibly dense college math classes, but I promise you, this is literally the hidden machinery behind how the modern business world actually operates. We're going to unpack this source material step by step. My absolute goal here is to give you a clear, structured roadmap for taking what looks like completely random numbers and turning them into highly effective strategic choices. Okay, let's dive into this. So how do the absolute best managers actually make their choices? I mean, we constantly romanticize this whole idea of the visionary leader, right? Operating purely on some magical gut feeling or bold intuition. And hey, sure, intuition definitely has its place. But think about a truly high-stakes corporate environment. Picture a company launching a multi-million-dollar product line based entirely on one executive's hunch, only to find out their target demographic doesn't even want the thing. When millions of dollars, thousands of jobs, or major strategic pivots are on the line, intuition simply doesn't scale. The reality, the most successful business choices out there are grounded in a really rigorous, repeatable discipline. It's a highly deliberate framework specifically designed to actively yank guesswork right out of the equation, replacing all that messy uncertainty with crystal clear strategic clarity. Section 1, the art of decisions. Let's really try to shift our mindset away from seeing statistics as just doing math and start viewing it as this incredibly dynamic decision-making engine. Our source material actually defines this perfectly, and every single word here carries massive weight. Quote, "Statistics in management is the discipline of collecting, organizing, analyzing, and interpreting data to guide decisions." It is so helpful to zero in on that word discipline. In management, crunching numbers isn't just some sporadic, one-off task you do when a fire breaks out. It's a continuous, rigorous practice. Treating it as a discipline literally means you're building a persistent habit of inquiry. You aren't just reacting to whatever the market throws at you. You are actively maintaining a system that constantly filters out all the noise of the business environment to give you a clear, actionable signal.
So the crucial point is, the ultimate North Star of our entire text today is guiding decisions. Seriously, if you're compiling these elaborate, beautiful spreadsheets just to have them sit forever in someone's inbox, well, you aren't actually practicing managerial statistics. Everything, and I mean everything you do with data, has to eventually point toward making a definitive choice. Let's say managers trying to decide whether or not to launch a brand new fitness wearable. They pull the market data, they look at competitor pricing, they evaluate all those manufacturing costs. That data acts just like a compass. It tells them the terrain, where the obstacles are, and the potential paths forward. But a compass doesn't actually walk the trail for you, does it? The data illuminates the landscape, but making that final, committed decision to hit launch, that is always the destination.
All right, moving right along to Section 2, the 4 steps of data. So, how do we actually take all the chaos of the real world and somehow turn it into a concrete decision? Well, let's look at the life cycle.
This whole process relies on 4 very distinct chronological steps. 1. Collecting the raw material. 2. Organizing it into a logical structure. 3. Analyzing it to actually find patterns. And 4. Interpreting what those patterns mean out in the real world. To really see this in action, let's walk through a quick example. Imagine a big national coffee chain, and they want to boost their weekend profitability. First step, they collect raw receipt data from thousands of individual stores. Second, they organize that massive pile of data by specific days and hours. Third, they analyze it, and boom, they discover this consistent, sharp dip in sales right between 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. on Saturdays. Finally, step 4, they interpret that finding. They don't just throw their hands up and say, well, sales are low. No, they interpret it to mean they need to introduce a brand new mid-afternoon weekend promotion to drive foot traffic. Collecting, organizing, analyzing, and interpreting. It's a chain reaction, and honestly, you cannot skip a single step without the whole thing just completely falling apart.
And this brilliantly illustrates what brings us right back to our core purpose, to guide decisions. One of the most common pitfalls in all of business is what we love to call paralysis by analysis. It happens all the time when a team gets totally, hopelessly stuck on step 3. They build these incredibly complex mathematical models, they generate absolutely beautiful charts, and they just analyze those numbers endlessly. But if they fail to step up, interpret that data, and actually make a choice, the entire exercise is a failure. Doing the first 3 steps perfectly is completely useless unless it actually forces a manager to take action. The loop only closes when a decision is finally made.
Okay, Section 3, Universality across all domains. Let's expand our perspective a little bit outward here to see where this exact discipline actually lives out in the wild.
The text explicitly highlights 3 massive, distinct areas where this applies: the scientific, industrial, and social domains. And this really proves our 4-step framework is completely universal. So, in the scientific domain, this might look like a huge pharmaceutical company analyzing years of clinical trial data just to decide if a new medication is genuinely safe for public release. Over in the industrial domain, you might find a global logistics company tracking delivery times down to the minute to optimize their supply chain, which, by the way, can potentially save them millions in fuel costs. And then the social domain. This one is particularly fascinating. This involves understanding human behavior. Streaming services are a great example. They use immense amounts of demographic and viewing data to predict consumer trends, very often figuring out exactly what kind of show you're going to want to watch next before you even know it yourself. Across literally every industry, this statistical foundation remains the absolute bedrock of progress.
Moving right into Section 4, from surveys to machine learning, now we're going to track the massive scope and the evolution of the very tools used in this discipline.
Now, what's really interesting here is that while the ultimate goal of guiding decisions hasn't changed one bit, the underlying mechanisms to get there have expanded dramatically. Historically, the foundational underpinnings of all this relied heavily on things like physical surveys, highly structured experiments, and pretty basic mathematical models. And look, they were tried and true, but they were definitely limited by simple human processing power. Fast forward to today, and we've transitioned into modern applications like machine learning, data mining, and high-performance computing. We are basically taking those exact same foundational concepts and scaling them up to an unbelievable degree. To put this into a little perspective for you, a modern machine learning algorithm can process, organize, and analyze way more data in a single afternoon than an entire team of statisticians armed with clipboards and calculators could have managed in an entire century. The scale has changed completely, but the philosophy, that remains exactly the same.
And this brings us to a really helpful distinction our source makes between theoretical and applied statistics. Think of theoretical statisticians kind of like the architects, right? They are the ones working behind the scenes, developing the complex math, the brand new algorithms, and figuring out the underlying rules of probability. Applied statisticians, on the other hand, well, they're the builders. They take those theoretical algorithms and they apply them directly to the real world, like, say, a logistics manager using a newly developed routing algorithm to make absolutely sure your grocery deliveries arrive on time. But here's the kicker. Whether you're writing incredibly dense mathematical formulas in a quiet university lab, or you're using those exact same formulas to optimize a chaotic factory floor, the whole process still relies entirely on that standard 4-step foundation we just talked about. Collect, organize, analyze, and interpret. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final, pretty provocative thought to consider. Your data is collected, it's perfectly organized, it's completely analyzed, but are you interpreting it to actually make the right decision? You could literally have the most advanced machine learning models and the absolute most beautifully organized databases in your entire industry. But if you drop the ball on that final step, interpreting the data to take confident action, you've completely missed the point. As you go back to your own projects and your own teams, just remember, the statistics are really just the map. You still have to be the one to step up and choose the path. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I genuinely hope this framework helps you make your next big decision with total clarity and confidence.